Have you ever heard that truth can be stranger than fiction? When we think of the British royalty, we often imagine glamour, wealth, and age-old traditions. But what if all that is just a facade, a veil concealing something far darker? Diana Spencer, the people's princess, left unsettling clues about secrets that defy logic, traditions rooted in archaic times, and a desperate struggle to protect her children from an uncertain fate. Welcome to another night where mysteries never sleep. I am Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Get ready, because what you're about to hear might completely change how you view the monarchy. Why did Diana Spencer believe that her blood was more important to the royal family than she herself was? What role did the strange rituals at Balmoral play? And why did the princess think she was being used for something far greater than she could comprehend? And most importantly, was her tragic death just an accident, or the inevitable outcome of a battle against inhuman forces? From the moment Diana Spencer joined the royal family, the media portrayed her as the people's princess, a symbol of simplicity in a world of luxury. Have you ever wondered if that people's princess moniker sounds too good to be true? Well, keep that thought in mind. However, this public image concealed a disturbing truth. According to confidences she shared with David, she was selected to marry Prince Charles not for love, nor even for social or political reasons, but for something much darker: her lineage. Diana claimed she was chosen because her blood met certain requirements she didn't fully understand, but were essential to the royal family's workings. "My blood protects them," she once said, unable to explain exactly how. The idea of a marriage decided based on something as ancient as blood sounds like something out of a medieval tale, but for Diana, it was an undeniable reality. She was told that her lineage, the Spencers, possessed a purity and a connection to the past that few families could match. According to her, this type of selection wasn't unique to her case, but was a common practice among European monarchies for centuries. Diana confessed that she began to feel she wasn't seen as a person, but rather as a means to an end, a resource to be exploited for the sake of something that was never fully explained to her. Over time, these suspicions evolved into facts Diana could no longer ignore. In her first months as a princess, she began noticing documents in the family archives that meticulously recorded births, marriages, and even deaths with an unsettling level of detail. These records didn't just cover the usual milestones of a family. They included information on physical characteristics and medical analyses. Diana stumbled upon reports discussing her own genetics, documents she had neither authorized nor known about. It was then she realized she wasn't there as a simple wife or mother, but as a key component of something far greater. The constant pressure to meet the expectations of her lineage left Diana feeling trapped. "I'm not a person to them," she confided to David. That phrase reflected not only the emotional isolation she experienced, but also her struggle to find her place within a system that seemed to treat her as an object rather than a human being. Her complaints fell on deaf ears, because even those who seemed to want to help her were part of the same system that had placed her there. No one dared to question the traditions or challenge the unspoken rules that had governed the royal family for generations. The most disturbing revelation came when Diana began to suspect that her blood wasn't just important for maintaining a pure lineage, but for something even darker. On one occasion, she showed David a series of marks on her wrists that she didn't remember making herself. "This happened during my honeymoon," she recalled, noting that she had woken up with a slight pain and a strange sensation around her. No one gave her convincing explanations, and any attempt to ask questions was met with evasive responses. Diana started to believe that her blood was being used in rituals she wasn't aware of, and these suspicions haunted her until her death. "All right, now this is getting serious. Rituals? Blood? It feels like we've stepped out of a biography and into a horror movie." In her later years, Diana became obsessed with protecting her children, especially William, from what she considered a family curse. "They'll never be free if I don't do something," she told David more than once. This obsession drove her to investigate further into the connection between the Spencers and the Windsors, uncovering links that no one in the royal family was willing to discuss. With every answer she found, more questions arose, and the only certainty was that she had been used from the start and may have never had a chance to escape her fate. Balmoral Castle, known as one of the royal family's most iconic residences, was for Diana much more than a summer retreat. According to what she told David, the castle held secrets that didn't appear on postcards or official photographs. During her honeymoon with Charles, Diana was taken to an area of the castle that didn't appear on any official map. What she described left David paralyzed. Dark, cold hallways and stairs that seemed to descend endlessly into a place where the air felt dense and smelled metallic, like dried blood. At the end of this descent, Diana recalled a heavy iron door leading to a room lit by torches, which seemed to transport her to an ancient time. The walls were covered with engraved symbols, figures she didn't recognize but that evoked a primal fear. In the center of the room was the most disturbing sight: a man, or something resembling a man, with gray, scaly skin and yellow eyes glowing in the dim light. It wasn't human, Diana told David in a tone that mixed terror and certainty. According to her, Charles and other family members knelt before this figure, reciting words in an unknown language, and forced her to do the same. If your spouse starts chanting in strange languages in front of a weird creature, it might be time to reconsider your marriage vows. What happened next remained fragmented in her memory. Diana mentioned losing consciousness or her mind blocking out the details, but she remembered waking up in her room with her hands stained with blood. Beside her was a container, but she never dared to look inside. When she tried to find answers, she encountered only silence and warning glances that told her not to push further. This wasn't an accident, she later told David, convinced it was a premeditated act to involve her in something far beyond her understanding. Diana began noticing strange occurrences in the following weeks. At Balmoral, it was common to hear screams at night, but no one seemed alarmed. She was told it was the wind or wild animals, but she knew they were human voices. "Those screams aren't normal," she confided. Once, she tried to trace the source of the sound, but an assistant stopped her, smiling nervously as they warned her not to walk alone through the hallways. This only fueled her paranoia and reinforced her feeling that she was trapped in something beyond her control. The castle, which for many represented the power and tradition of the British monarchy, became a prison for Diana. According to what she told David, Balmoral wasn't just a residence, but the stage for meetings and rituals conducted in the shadows. Her attempts to delve further led her to discover ancient documents and objects adorned with symbols similar to those she had seen in the underground room. However, each answer she found seemed to open the door to even greater horrors. Over time, Diana stopped trusting those around her. She feared even her closest friends might know what was happening and, instead of helping her, could betray her. Her fear wasn't unfounded. On more than one occasion, she noticed that topics from her private conversations were mentioned in places where she hadn't spoken of them. She was certain she was constantly being watched, especially at Balmoral, where the shadows seemed longer and the silences heavier. The birth of Prince William, a moment of joy for the public, was for Diana an experience marked by horror and confusion. According to documents she confided to David, something else happened that night in the hospital. While official reports described a successful birth, Diana discovered there had been a second extraction, a term that didn't appear in normal records. In one of her tensest conversations, she confessed to David that what she saw that night was something she could never forget. Diana claimed it wasn't just William who was born that night. According to what she overheard from the doctors and briefly glimpsed, there was another baby, but not an ordinary one. It looked like a baby, but something wasn't right, she explained. She described it as a creature with deformed limbs and something unusual about its face, like a second pair of eyes. When she tried to get a closer look, she was quickly moved away, and the doctors assured her everything was under control. The only phrase she managed to hear was, "It's normal, we'll take care of it." For months, Diana tried to get answers, but all her efforts were blocked. The doctors who attended the birth were evasive, and every time she asked questions, the response was the same: "Focus on your recovery." It was then she began to suspect that this second baby wasn't a mistake or a genetic anomaly, but part of something beyond her understanding. Notes found in the documents mentioned terms like protected lineage and genetic adjustment, words that made no sense to her but appeared with unsettling frequency. Over time, Diana began to connect this event with other fragments of information she had gathered. According to what she told David, she had heard rumors within royal circles about genetic experiments and alterations in heirs to the throne. "They don't see children the way we do," she said once. This idea, though it seemed far-fetched, gained traction when she found documents related to medical studies conducted on William during his early years, tests that weren't common for other children in the family. The memory of that night haunted her constantly. Diana had nightmares in which she relived the moment of birth, but instead of a baby, she saw something monstrous being taken away from her. These visions, though they could be attributed to stress and trauma, were, for her, a reflection of the truth. They're hiding something that started with William, and I don't know how far it goes, she told David. Her obsession with protecting her children became her top priority, even over her own safety. Diana came to suspect that the fate of this second baby was tied to the rituals she had witnessed at Balmoral. Although she was never able to confirm anything, she firmly believed there was a connection between her lineage and the events surrounding her. Every time she tried to seek answers, doors were closed and threats became more direct. However, her maternal instinct never let her give up, and until the last moment of her life, she fought to uncover the truth the royal family was determined to hide. In one of her most confidential conversations with David, Diana showed him a small object filled with symbolism. A metal pendant decorated with a circle in the center of which was an eye surrounded by what looked like claws. According to her, she had taken it during one of her stays at Balmoral, where she had seen the symbol repeated on multiple objects, from engravings on the walls to official documents. "This means something," she said, convinced it wasn't a simple decoration, but a key piece of the rituals she had witnessed. The pendant evoked conflicting feelings in Diana. On the one hand, she felt an instinctive repulsion toward it, as if it were imbued with a negative energy. On the other hand, she was obsessed with understanding its meaning. She began investigating in secret, looking for references in old books and archives she managed to obtain covertly. "This symbol is everywhere, but no one talks about it," she explained to David, who began to share her paranoia upon noticing the pendant seemed to have a purpose beyond decoration. Diana confessed that she had seen the same symbol on the container of red liquid she found in Prince Charles's cabinet. According to her suspicions, the pendant not only represented something for the royal family, but was directly connected to their darker rituals. "Charles has one just like it," she said, adding that she had seen him wear it on several occasions, especially during private meetings. This discovery filled her with questions she could never answer, as any attempt to delve into the matter was met with silence or threats. David also began to notice something strange about the pendant. Every time Diana carried it with her, she seemed more restless, as if the object itself had an effect on her. On one occasion, she confessed to hearing whispers while holding it, though she couldn't determine if it was her mind playing tricks on her or if the pendant was genuinely linked to something supernatural. Whispers coming from a necklace. That's the kind of thing that would make even a ghost hunter run for the hills. "I'm not crazy, David. This isn't normal," she insisted, showing him a series of drawings she had made trying to replicate the symbols she had seen at Balmoral, all of them related to the pendant's design. Over time, Diana began to feel the pendant wasn't just a simple amulet, but a message. According to her, the object was designed to be recognized by those who understood its meaning, a kind of visual password within the most secret circles of the royal family. She tried using this theory to approach certain members of her entourage, but all she achieved was increasing the distrustful looks directed at her. "They know I have it," she told David, convinced the pendant had put a target on her back. In the end, the pendant became yet another burden for Diana, a constant reminder she was surrounded by a system she couldn't understand or fight. She stored it in a safe place, away from others' sight, but its image remained etched in her mind. According to her final words on the subject, she believed the pendant was just one piece of a much larger puzzle, one she never managed to complete, but knew had implications far more terrifying than anyone could imagine. In one of the most revealing conversations between Diana and David, she showed him a photograph she had secretly taken of a small glass vial filled with a dark red liquid. The vial, which she found in Prince Charles's cabinet, had a label with the same symbol of the eye surrounded by claws she had seen at Balmoral. "This isn't just blood," she told David with an expression of both fear and disgust. According to her, the vial was connected to the rituals she had witnessed, though she couldn't determine exactly how or why. Diana began to notice the vial wasn't an isolated object. She had seen similar vials on other occasions, especially at private royal family gatherings. She recalled that during the Balmoral ritual, Charles and other participants drank from a liquid that seemed identical to the contents of that vial. According to what she told David, this drink was an integral part of the ritual and seemed to serve a purpose beyond the symbolic. "They believe this gives them power," she said, implying the ceremony wasn't just a formality but something that, in her words, felt real. The discovery of the vial led her to investigate its origins. Diana secretly contacted experts in symbolism and the occult, who gave her ambiguous but unsettling answers. According to them, the liquid could be connected to ancient practices involving blood, sacrifices, and pacts. Look, when you start mixing mysterious vials with ancient sacrifices, all you're missing is the Necronomicon to complete the horror movie package. These theories, while gruesome, didn't seem far-fetched to Diana, who had already seen too much to dismiss any possibility. "I don't know what's in it, but I know it's not good," she told David, who began to share her fear. The most disturbing event occurred when Diana tried to analyze the vial's contents. Though she was never able to send it to a laboratory, she managed to extract a small sample to examine under a microscope. According to what she saw, the sample contained something that didn't seem natural, as if it were composed of human cells mixed with something unidentifiable. "This shouldn't exist," she confessed to David, who urged her to destroy the vial for her own safety. However, Diana decided to keep it as evidence, knowing it could be a key piece to proving what was happening. The vial also became a symbol of Diana's isolation. Every time she looked at it, she was reminded of how far she was from her former life, a life where problems were superficial and monsters didn't exist outside of fairy tales. "This is what they really are," she told David, convinced the vial represented not only the royal family's rituals, but also their true nature. The object became a constant reminder she was fighting against something much bigger than she could handle. In the end, Diana never discovered the vial's true purpose, but she was convinced its existence was the key to understanding the rituals and secret practices of the royal family. Though she tried to gather more evidence, her life ended before she could reveal the truth. The vial disappeared along with many of the objects she left behind, but its memory lived on in David's words, who described it as the most unsettling object he had seen during his time with the princess. One of the most terrifying experiences Diana shared with David occurred at Balmoral, but not during the rituals. According to her, the nights in the castle were plagued by an element no one seemed to notice or preferred to ignore: the screams. "These aren't normal screams," she confided one time, describing them as sharp, almost inhuman sounds that echoed through the hallways when everything was silent. These screams often woke her in the middle of the night, and though she initially thought they were a product of her imagination, their persistence convinced her otherwise. Diana tried to find logical explanations. She asked the assistants and castle staff if they heard them too, but the answers were always evasive. Some offered uncomfortable smiles and said it was likely animals in the nearby woods, while others didn't even bother responding. However, Diana knew they weren't animals. The intensity and tone of the screams weren't of this world, something that sent chills down her spine every time she recalled them. "I don't know what's worse, hearing them or seeing how everyone pretends they don't exist," she told David. One night, Diana decided to follow the sounds. Armed with a flashlight, she walked the castle's hallways, tracing the echoes to an unused wing of the property. When she arrived, she found a door unlike the others, reinforced with chains and locks. As she approached, the screams seemed to grow more intense, but before she could try opening it, a firm hand rested on her shoulder. It was a royal assistant who, with a calm but authoritative voice, told her to return to her room. "This isn't a place for you, Your Highness," they said, making it clear she shouldn't attempt this again. Diana couldn't shake what she had experienced from her mind. According to what she told David, that night marked a turning point in her perception of Balmoral and the royal family in general. She was convinced the screams were coming from people, not animals, and that whatever was happening behind that door was connected to the rituals she had witnessed. "There are things they do in the shadows, things that should never come to light," she said, her voice tinged with a fear David never forgot. Over time, Diana began noticing a pattern. The screams always occurred after certain meetings or family events held at the castle. Often, the same people who participated in the rituals were present on those dates, leading her to suspect the sounds were part of something far darker. Although she lacked concrete evidence, her intuition told her the screams weren't accidental or coincidental, but an echo of the practices conducted at Balmoral. As the months passed, Diana avoided spending nights at the castle whenever possible. The screams became a recurring nightmare, even when she wasn't there. "I feel like they follow me wherever I go," she told David, who tried to comfort her without success. To Diana, the screams were more than terrifying sounds. They were a constant reminder she was trapped in a world she couldn't escape, and that what she had seen and heard was only the tip of the iceberg. On several occasions, Diana handed David medical documents she believed held proof something strange was happening within her family. At first glance, the papers appeared to be standard records: birth reports, genetic analyses, and general medical details. However, upon closer examination, David began to notice disturbing details. There were handwritten notes that didn't match the official format, mentioning terms like secondary extraction, stabilized anomalies, and compatibility ensured. Diana was convinced these documents were related to the rituals she had witnessed at Balmoral. According to her, the genetic analyses weren't just routine checks, but part of a larger system that used members of the royal family as pieces of an unknown mechanism. In one of her most chilling conversations, she told David, "It's not just me. This goes beyond. William is involved too, though he doesn't know it." This statement alarmed David, who began fearing for the future of Diana's children. One of the most disturbing documents she showed him was a report related to her first pregnancy. Although it appeared to be a standard record, it contained a note mentioning complementary procedures performed during the birth, something Diana didn't recall authorizing. When she tried to get more information, she was ignored or dismissed by the medical staff. This discovery reinforced her conviction her body had been used without her consent, and that this was directly related to the rituals and hidden practices of the royal family. David began to realize the documents didn't just speak of the past, but also hinted at something about the future. There were mentions of genetic studies seemingly designed to predict specific traits in heirs to the throne, as if the royal lineage was being deliberately manipulated. Although he couldn't understand everything they said, David knew what he had in his hands was dangerous, and that if anyone else discovered he had this information, their lives would be in danger. For Diana, the documents were confirmation her marriage had been nothing more than a facade to fulfill a greater purpose. "They chose me for my blood, and now they're using my children's," she told David, tears streaming down her face. This fear drove her to take desperate measures, including handing copies to trusted journalists, though many of those attempts were mysteriously thwarted. The documents would disappear en route, or the journalists would inexplicably back out. In the end, the medical documents became one of the reasons Diana felt most vulnerable. She knew she had proof of something significant, but she also knew she lacked the resources to confront the royal family's machinery. Her only solace was the hope that, if anything happened to her, the copies she had given to David and other allies would one day come to light, exposing the truth that had endangered her life and that of her children. After Diana's death, David, one of her closest confidants, began experiencing what he described as constant surveillance. At first, he thought he was being paranoid. He noticed cars parked outside his house, always the same ones, with people seemingly reading newspapers or looking at their phones. However, over time, he realized these weren't paparazzi or curious onlookers, they were watchers. His instincts, honed after years of working in security, told him he wasn't imagining things. "They know what Diana told me," he thought, leading him to take extreme precautions. One night, upon returning home, David found the door slightly ajar. He entered cautiously, expecting to find common burglars, but what he saw was far worse. All his belongings were in place, except for the documents Diana had entrusted to him. They didn't take anything valuable, only the evidence, he recounted, confirming his worst fears. He was being watched, and they knew exactly what to look for. That night, he decided he couldn't stay in one place for long. He began moving from city to city, staying in cheap motels and leaving little trace of his whereabouts. However, even on the move, David couldn't escape those following him. Once, while walking through a local market, he noticed two men watching him. One of them nodded toward the other, as if confirming something. David dropped what he was holding and ran. On another occasion, he found a note on his car windshield with a clear message. "We know what you're doing. Stop now or you'll regret it." The threat didn't need a signature, he knew exactly who was behind it. David tried to seek help, but quickly realized he had no one to turn to. Contacting the authorities was useless, as many were under the influence of the same people who were watching him. He considered reaching out to the journalists Diana had tried to contact, but remembered how the packages she had sent mysteriously vanished. "They have access to everything," he thought, increasingly aware he was up against an omnipresent enemy. Nights became a torment for David. He often heard strange noises outside wherever he was staying, footsteps in the hallway or knocks on the windows. Once, while staying in an isolated cabin, he found a symbol carved into the basement wall, the same circle with the eye and claws Diana had shown him. To him, this symbol was more than a mark. It was a message, a warning they knew exactly where he was. The feeling of being surrounded became suffocating, and every time he tried to move, the circle seemed to close tighter. Over time, David accepted there was no way to escape. "They don't want to kill me, they want to silence me," he thought, realizing his life wasn't in immediate danger as long as he didn't share what he knew. However, he also understood every day spent in anonymity was another day lost in his attempt to honor Diana's memory. Though fear consumed him, he continued writing his account, hoping somehow the truth would come to light, even if it meant sacrificing what little he had left. Days before her tragic death, Diana handed David a small sealed wooden box with clear instructions. "If something happens to me, make it public." Inside the box were documents, photographs, and small notes detailing the most terrifying experiences she had endured. Diana, visibly exhausted, seemed to be racing against time. "They know what I'm doing, but I can't stop," she said. To her, the box represented her last hope of exposing the truth, even if she wasn't there to tell it. David didn't open the box immediately. At the time, he didn't fully grasp the gravity of what it contained. Only after Diana's death did he decide to examine its contents. What he found left him speechless. There were photographs of places he recognized from Diana's descriptions: the underground room at Balmoral, medical documents related to her children, and even a handwritten letter in which Diana expressed her fear she wouldn't live to see 40. "This wasn't an accident," read the letter, which seemed to be both a warning for David and whoever found the box. One of the most unsettling items was a piece of fabric stained with dried blood, accompanied by a note reading, "This was used at Balmoral." Although David didn't understand its purpose, he knew it was tied to the rituals Diana had spoken of. There was also a drawing of the eye symbol surrounded by claws, with Diana's annotations attempting to decipher its meaning. "This isn't just a symbol, it's a map," she had written, though David never managed to understand what she meant. The box also contained a list of names, many of whom were well-known public figures. According to Diana, these individuals were connected to the rituals and secret practices of the royal family. The list was a testament to the scale of what she was up against. "It's not just the royal family, this goes beyond," she had told David, implying the scope of these activities was global. To David, the list was both evidence and a death sentence if it fell into the wrong hands. After reviewing the box, David understood why Diana had been so paranoid in her final days. Every item inside was a piece of a much larger puzzle, one Diana hadn't completed. Although he wanted to fulfill his promise to make its contents public, he knew simply possessing it put him in danger. He decided to hide the box in a remote location, far from where he was, hoping someone would one day find it and continue what Diana had started. The box became both an emotional and physical burden for David. He knew it was the key to revealing the truth, but also knew if anyone discovered he had it, his life would be worthless. "It's the only proof left," he thought, as he prepared to live the rest of his days in constant flight, protecting the last remnants of the princess who had once trusted him. In one of her last desperate attempts to reveal the truth, Diana prepared a package containing documents and evidence she considered crucial. This package, according to what she told David, contained photographs, letters, and excerpts from diaries detailing what she had witnessed at Balmoral and other royal family locations. The recipient was a trusted journalist Diana had chosen for their reputation for standing up to power without fear. However, that package never reached its destination. "I sent it, but it disappeared as if it never existed," Diana told David, visibly distressed. When she contacted the courier company, Diana received a disconcerting response. There was no record of the shipment. The package wasn't in their system, and employees assured her they had no record of receiving it. This set off alarm bells for Diana, who began to suspect her movements were being watched more closely than she had imagined. "They have eyes everywhere," she told David. This event not only heightened her paranoia, but also convinced her she was up against a far more powerful enemy than she had anticipated. The package's contents were so important Diana prepared an additional copy, which she entrusted to David days before her death. However, the original package, which contained more detailed and compromising material, seemed to have vanished. For Diana, this wasn't a simple accident or administrative error. It was a sign the people responsible were willing to do whatever it took to protect their secrets. "This is a warning," she told David, aware her life was in danger. David tried to investigate what might have happened to the package, but hit a wall of silence. Any attempt to trace it ended in dead ends, and the few people he had contacted began avoiding him as if they feared being associated with the matter. "No one wants to talk. No one wants to be near this," he thought. Realizing the evidence Diana had gathered was so dangerous, even those willing to help had decided to back away. The package's disappearance marked a point of no return for Diana, and left David with an emotional burden he could never overcome. If we had been more careful, maybe it would have arrived, he reflected, blaming himself for not insisting on safer methods to deliver it. To him, that package contained answers that might have changed the course of events and perhaps saved Diana's life. Over time, David came to accept the original package was lost forever, but its existence remained proof of what they were up against. Although its fate remains unknown, its disappearance confirmed what Diana had always suspected. The royal family's reach was unimaginable, capable of erasing evidence and silencing those who tried to expose them. No matter how far you go, they'll always be one step ahead, David thought, resigned to the idea the world might never know everything Diana had tried to reveal. On August 31, 1997, the world woke up to the tragic news of Princess Diana's death in a Paris tunnel. Official reports cited an accident caused by the recklessness of the driver, Henri Paul, who was allegedly under the influence of alcohol. However, for David and many others, this explanation was too convenient. This wasn't an accident, he thought, remembering Diana's warnings about her fear of not living past 40. The circumstances of the accident were riddled with irregularities. From delays in medical assistance to the absence of functioning cameras in the tunnel, everything seemed designed to leave more questions than answers. David recalled how Diana had told him she felt she was constantly being followed, and that if anything happened to her, it would be planned. "They control everything," she had said, and those words echoed in his mind as he saw images of the wrecked car on television. One of the details that most unsettled David was the presence of motorcycles at the accident scene. According to initial reports, several witnesses mentioned seeing motorcyclists pursuing Diana's car before the crash. These statements, while relevant, were quickly dismissed by authorities. They were there. "There's no way this wasn't planned," thought David, convinced the motorcycles were part of an operation to ensure Diana wouldn't survive. Another suspicious element was how Diana's body was handled after her death. David knew standard autopsy protocols weren't followed properly, and certain medical tests had been deliberately omitted. Additionally, reports about the blood alcohol level of Henri Paul, the driver, were questioned by colleagues who insisted he didn't drink while working. This was an execution, not an accident, David thought, increasingly convinced the crash was orchestrated to silence Diana and prevent her from revealing what she knew. The media coverage also played a key role in diverting attention from the case's inconsistencies. The paparazzi were blamed for chasing the car, but few outlets delved into the security failures or decisions made after the crash. To David, this focus wasn't accidental but part of a broader strategy to close the case quickly and avoid deeper investigations. They knew the world wouldn't ask questions if they had a clear culprit, he reflected, watching the public accept the official version without questioning it. To this day, the accident remains the subject of conspiracy theories. For David, there was no doubt Diana's death was planned. The events leading up to her end were too precise to be coincidental, and the threats she and he had received confirmed they were up against an unyielding enemy. "They did this, and I'm next," he thought, as he continued to hide in a desperate attempt to survive and protect the little truth that remained. To Diana, the British royal family wasn't just a group of privileged people, but an institution surrounded by secrets that defied logic. According to what she told David, the rituals she witnessed, the documents she discovered, and the events she experienced at places like Balmoral revealed a terrifying truth. The royal family's power wasn't merely political but something deeper, almost inhuman. "They're not like us," she said once, hinting what she had seen challenged her understanding of the world. Diana was convinced her lineage, the Spencers, had been deliberately chosen to strengthen the Windsors, not just in terms of royal blood, but for something much more profound. According to her, there was something special about her genetics that the rituals and dark practices sought to exploit. "I'm not a wife, I'm a sacrifice," she confided to David, who didn't know how to comfort her after hearing those words. To Diana, the royal family wasn't just trying to preserve their lineage. They were feeding a system that transcended humanity. The symbols and objects she found reinforced her fears. The pendant of the eye surrounded by claws, the vials of red liquid, and the documents with cryptic annotations all pointed to a network of practices that seemed drawn from an ancient cult. Diana came to believe the royal family maintained alliances with something or someone beyond politics. "They do things that don't make sense but give them power," she told David, suggesting the true purpose of these activities was to maintain their dominance on a level the public could never imagine. The rituals at Balmoral and private events were just the tip of the iceberg. According to Diana, These practices were connected to other royal families and figures of power worldwide. "This isn't just England. It's global," she explained, noting what she had uncovered wasn't exclusive to the Windsors, but part of a much larger network. This revelation filled her with helplessness, as she understood confronting them meant challenging a system that had existed for centuries. For Diana, her greatest fear wasn't what they might do to her, but what might happen to her children. "William and Harry have no idea what awaits them," she told David, making it clear her fight wasn't just for her own life, but to protect them from a seemingly inevitable fate. However, with each passing day, her isolation grew, and the people she trusted began to disappear or distance themselves, leaving Diana alone in her battle against what she described as an inhuman force. The true power behind the royal family, according to Diana, couldn't be measured in terms of wealth or political influence. It was something darker, a mix of tradition, rituals, and alliances that defied comprehension. Although she never fully understood what she was up against, her final words to David were clear. "They're not what they seem, and they'll do anything to make sure the world never knows." Diana's story serves as a reminder that even within the gilded halls of royalty, shadows deeper than we can imagine may lurk. If her words hold any truth, we're facing a conspiracy that challenges everything we know about power and control. This story is just one piece, and someday, we might see the full puzzle. If this made you think, too, subscribe and like the video. That helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share it, because more voices mean more discoveries. If you've made it this far, it's because something in this mystery captivated you, but I bet you haven't seen everything yet. Click on the next videos now to continue your journey into the unknown. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe so you don't miss the next secrets I'm about to reveal. But be careful, once you step inside, there's no turning back.